for zooming in today with us. On behalf of the Sandbox Center team, we're super excited to have our sponsors, Barriston Law, back to discuss employment law considerations as it relates to COVID-19 and its ongoing updates. Josh and Jacqueline from Barriston Law are back, and joining them today are some special guests that I would like to welcome. Janice LaRue from HR Performance and Results, MPP Andrea Kanjan, MP Doug Shipley, and MP John Broussard will be joining us. I think, will be joining us just shortly. So thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. For those who haven't been acquainted with me or the Sandbox, I'm Mackenzie. I head up marketing and public relations, and I'm one of the 5 members of the Sandbox team. I know all of the panelists have been to the Sandbox before, but for those who are joining us that haven't, the Sandbox is located downtown Barrie, Ontario, and we connect people and their ideas to business resources on their journey to success. So before we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple of quick housekeeping Zoom rules for our attendees joining us today. The attendees are muted as they come in. We will be taking questions throughout, so we really encourage you to use the Q&A feature that's just at the bottom of your screen for questions. And whenever one comes across your mind, please use the Q&A feature and not the chat so we can organize them. And Jacqueline will facilitate the questions as they come in. And resources from this webinar will be provided afterwards. And I just wanted to thank all of our community partners for supporting with the sharing of our events, like the Barrie Chamber of Commerce, Georgian College, Bracebridge Chamber of Commerce, and many more. We really appreciate your support. So just a final thank you to our sponsors, Barriston, for delivering this session today. I know the last 2 sessions on this topic have been super beneficial. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Josh Fowler to get us started.
Hi, and thank you, Mackenzie, and thank you, Sandbox, for once again hosting this. It's a pleasure to be back on here and to provide further updates, and it's great to be here with Janice LaRue from HR Performance and Results, MPP Kanjan, and MPs Broussard and Shipley. So thanks so much for all of you for joining us. I know your guidance in the last 2 seminars have been really, really helpful to the participants and to businesses across the region. And once again, thank you to Sandbox for putting this on. I know it's super beneficial for everyone involved. So I just want to start by, I think the agenda for today is to provide a brief update as to what's going on. There have been some changes, and we've been seeing changes almost on a daily basis, starting with the essential businesses, and then we'll get on into the programs that are offered by the federal government. We'll try and get through this as quickly as possible and then open it up to questions and answers for the panelists. Earlier on, the provincial government, I believe it was on Saturday evening, essentially released a list of essential businesses, a revised list, and it really focused on supply chains. So it's food services, healthcare, services that are related to healthcare and the construction industry, specifically with finalized construction on residential projects, hospital projects, and critical infrastructure. Telecommunications and IT have also remained on the list of essential services, financial services, maintenance, transportation services, manufacturing, agriculture and food production. Obviously, that's a key one. Construction, resources and energy, community services, research, and healthcare social services. Now, I know a lot of the questions I've been getting from some of my clients and business owners is, does my business qualify? Because a lot of times businesses, it's not so clear cut. You offer some services that could be considered essential and some services that could be considered non-essential. So, I mean, and the penalties for not complying with this sort of regulation can be significant for employers and businesses. So I think it's really important that we have a clear idea as to what is considered to be essential and what's considered not to be essential. And so I was hoping Andrea could kind of comment where the government's coming from on that and how we can clarify that for business owners.
Right, so thanks for the opportunity, Josh, and thanks for everyone who put this together. So, I mean, the list was narrowed down primarily because of health reasons. Initially, it was a little more generous, and so the advice we got from public health was we do have to shorten it to the bare necessities, because the faster we get this pandemic under control, the faster all of us can open back up the economy to regular channels and open up businesses to regular channels. However, so right now, the essential business list, similar to the last list, it is based on supply chain. The only difference being here is that there were some other areas where they were either loosely tied to the supply chain, or there was a slew of businesses that were given exemptions. That's not as applicable now under this list, which is why you notice the significant differences. And there's limitations within the word essential. I'll give you some quick examples, and then I'll pass it back on to Josh. One example I will use is if your business was deemed essential under the previous list. Let's take hardware stores, for example, because I used that last time. You were able to still have your hardware store and operate social distancing and disinfect, etc. Now that exact same hardware store is not deemed essential, it has to be closed. However, the asterisk in all of this is they can still do curbside pickup and they can do online delivery. What I mean by that is they can call the hardware store, or if they have the online capability, they can order their products and then they can pay over the phone, or they can do a tap if need be on the pickup. And it's similar to if you use food delivery, it's a similar process and they can do that. Benjamin Moore, for example, are operating that way as well. So it's a way to keep your customers safe, and it's a way to keep you and your employees safe. So that's still permissible, even though that particular business is not deemed essential. There are ways they can operate and still be able to have a business and have customers and keep everyone safe. So that would be one example. And then the other one obviously is the construction. We got a lot of questions about construction, a lot of pressure. And so while construction is on the essential business list, what it means is any residential housing, specifically residential, that already had the foundation built, they can continue on with that construction. If the foundation had not been laid yet at that construction site, they cannot continue with that site. Similar high rise, it's not permissible, and any commercial is not permissible. Again, on the commercial side, the asterisk is if it is, for example, a hospital or infrastructure major bridge. If you're working on a government project, it's likely to keep going through. The reason I say likely, not for sure, is it really depends on what the contract is that you signed with the government and how involved they are. For example, if it's expanding a student residence, we'd have to check the 188 number just to make sure that that particular student residence that you're building can still continue, and just get the assurances for that. Thanks, Josh.
So Andrea, if just say business owners have questions about, for instance, I've encountered businesses, and maybe Janice can jump in here as well, because I think you've encountered this. Part of their job or part of their contract has to deal with the safety and well-being, like under the maintenance section of the exempt list. But part of their contracts don't, right? It's with respect to general maintenance. But sometimes if they don't do their contract or fulfill the terms of their contract, the health and safety of the resident or the occupants could be jeopardized. Maybe it's not fair to put you in that position, but in those circumstances, could it be deemed to be essential?
So on maintenance, it depends on what it is. For example, if it's some sort of a pipe is broken or something like that in terms of maintenance. If it's outdoor and like a sewer system is blockaded or something like that, you have to unclog or unplug or kind of keep things moving in terms of whether it's water or sewer or electricity. That's still fair game. That is still deemed essential because we need it for safety purposes, right? And so the fine line here is if it's is the safety, right? So you want to keep your employees and your customers safe. And so the way you do that is you only respond to things that are critical. So if there's a water break, that's pretty essential. You want to fix that. If there's a major maintenance thing that needs to be repaired within a building or within your site, say it's landscaping and there's something on your site that does need to be repaired for the structural integrity of that site, that can be done. But if it's for something like cosmetic, spring maintenance, spruce up the flowers, unfortunately, that's not deemed essential at this present moment, even though it's spring. If there is some ambiguity, and there's still a lot out there. Look, this is it's not a perfect process, but we're trying to deal with it as prudently as possible. You can reach out to my office. Feel free, either call or email my office, and we'll try to get you some more direct answers. I would ask that you do try the 188 number first, the business information line. If that is insufficient and either you weren't given an answer or something not so great happened on the line and you were frustrated, please use me as your second source, and then I'll try to get you as direct an answer as possible. There is a lot of, like Josh was saying, there are some gray ambiguity areas because of the legalities of things and liability. So we do want to be careful here. And so I think everyone and the lawyers on this call would know very well, everyone is trying to mitigate their liability. So that's probably a reason why a lot of clear answers aren't given. So I will try in the capacity that I can legally give you better clarity. But at the end of the day, it's, if something is critical and it needs to be fixed, then that's essential. If it's something cosmetic, not essential.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrea. And I think that might provide clarity for some people. And as always, an employer and a business owner has the duty to comply with the OHSA, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, to ensure that they're providing a safe work environment for their employees, whether or not they're deemed to be essential. Janice, I don't know if you've had any encounters with that you wanted to talk about, or?
Yeah, I think just one quick example. We had a roofing business client who the Ministry of Labor actually was helpful for him and did clarify in terms of the type of work he's doing as it relates to the maintenance piece. So if he has a contract with a party as it relates to fixing a leaky roof, then that would be considered essential. And so the only thing that he had recommended from a Ministry of Labor perspective is to make sure you've got some documentation in place if you get questioned, so that you can then justify why you're doing that particular job.
Yeah, thank you, Janice, and thank you, Andrea. So I want to move now over to the federal side of things and talk about the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. So that's a proposed temporary subsidy for up to 12 weeks, retroactive to March 15th for eligible employers. The qualifying criteria is decreased revenue of at least 15% in March, which is a change from what it was previously, and 30% in subsequent months. Not-for-profits, charities, corporations, individuals, partnerships that pay salaries and bonuses to individuals qualify. Available on the first 75% of pre-crisis wages or salaries earned by employees. Maximum subsidy up to $847 per employee per week. Revenue must be from business carried on in Canada and earned from arm's length sources, and must be calculated using your normal accounting methods. Excludes revenues from extraordinary items and amounts on account of capital. So two important timelines I want to talk about. The reference period determining eligibility is the calendar month, March 2020 versus March 2019, or comparison using an average revenue earned in January and February of 2020. Select one method and use the same each month. Remuneration period is March 15th to April 11th, April 12th to May 9th, May 10th to June 6th. They can claim both the 10% pre-existing subsidy and this new 75% subsidy, but will not receive the benefit of both. All who meet the criteria for the 10% subsidy should claim it by withholding remittances. Timing is such that you will receive this benefit sooner. If you're also eligible for the 75% subsidy, the government will net out what you saved on the 10% against what it owes you for the 75% subsidy. So Janice, how to claim, and I think this is where I'm going to ask you to chime in, Janice. Can you kind of walk us through how these businesses can apply for that?
Well, they still have to certainly pass the legislation, so they're looking at reconvening Parliament, and maybe Andrea knows a little bit more, Doug, about that too as well. I think it's next week potentially.
I'm on right now. We just got notice from the Speaker that Parliament is being recalled on Saturday at 12:15 p.m. to deal with the wage subsidy.
Oh, that's awesome! Awesome.
Jean Broussard is now online with us. He was able to sign on a little bit earlier. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining us.
Sorry, Josh. I was on a call when it started.
No, it's perfect. Busy times. So I guess Parliament's being reconvened. Janice, maybe John and you can walk us through, and Doug can walk us through how they can expect businesses to apply.
John, did you want to take this one then, and based on the information that you have, and update everyone on this?
Well, I mean, we've received a draft copy of the bill. So right now, I mean, there's been a lot of public information on the bill itself, but until it's actually tabled in the House of Commons, we still are subject to parliamentary privilege, but I expect that shortly after the legislation is passed on Saturday, that the government will come out with information on how the wage subsidy application will be processed. I suspect, if it's anything like the CERB, it'll be a very simplified process. And this is the thing that we've been advocating. Janice, you and I have been talking regularly on the phone. We've been advocating for a very simplified process on this. The government's given indication as to what the criteria is going to be, and so that's out there publicly as far as the wage benefit is concerned as well. So I'm just trying to pull it out. So it says 75% of the wage subsidy deals were announced earlier. That's changed over the course of the last couple of days. If you recall, the first thing was the government was going to offer a 10% wage subsidy. It's gone up to 75%. The criteria has changed as well. So let me just read, Josh, if it's okay, and Janice, if I can read what I've got in front of me here, because this is the latest information. So all businesses with a decrease well, this has been changed actually, so I just want to make sure that I'm clear as I go through this. New businesses less than a year old may refer, so all businesses with a decrease of at least 30% in revenues in a month year over year. Now, new businesses less than a year old may refer to a 15% reduction in revenues since minimum of March 2020, or use an average of January and February revenues as of April. This was changed as of yesterday and announced by the finance minister. Businesses, charities, and not-for-profit employers are eligible to apply and may include or exclude the government subsidy the organization receives. That again was announced yesterday. $847 per week will be eligible for each employee, and employers are being asked to pay the remaining 25% of the employee's wages. Coverage for wages will be for the first $58,700, and the weekly payment, again, as I said, maxes out to $847. The subsidies are retroactive to March 15th, 2020 for qualifying businesses. And if there's any attempt by businesses, according to the government, to profit from the wage subsidy, there will be penalties of up to 250% of the value of the benefit that they've received. And the online portal, according to the government, and again, going back on Saturday and dealing with this, the online portal, according to the government, and the Prime Minister confirmed this morning, will be available in a period of 3 to 6 weeks, and the money will be available 6 weeks after the application is processed. So this is not going to be a process where people are going to get their money right away, or businesses are not going to get their money right away with respect to the wage subsidy. It will take some time to implement, but the most important thing is that we get back and make sure that the legislation is passed. And it's legislation, I'll remind you, that we're dealing with again, because in the original piece of legislation that was passed 3 weeks ago, the government, because of the advocacy of political parties, of organizations, Chamber, Canadian Federation of Business, this number has really moved. The goalpost on this number has really moved from that 10 to 75% range, because we were hearing locally as well that the 10% was not nearly enough to provide an employer the incentive to maintain their employees with that wage subsidy. So we're going back because the legislation, as introduced 3 weeks ago, needs to be amended, and we are going to fully support the government on the new legislation that happens on that I expect to be introduced on Saturday. So that's all I have.
Doug, do you have anything to add?
I was just saying, no, John was very thorough there, and just to let people know how quick things are changing. I was not even aware we were going back on Saturday, and we may not all be, but Parliament's being recalled. Once John brought that up, I was a little distracted reading some emails, and yes, in fact, John, I just see that email did just come through. Obviously, we'll be getting details on who's going and when, but that kind of gives an account to people who are watching right now or may watch us later. Things are evolving very quickly. Plans are changing quickly, and obviously some plans for Easter, even though they could have had many plans, are changing quickly. So I think John did a good job on that, Josh.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you, John. Just in case employers and businesses have questions, who should they out to? Is there similar to the provincial government? Is there a 1-800 helpline? Should they be contacting your office? Who should they be directed to?
Okay, so just at a federal level, I mean, right now I've got 5 people working daily answering the volume of emails, just incredible volume of emails and phone calls that I'm getting from local employers and individuals who are trying to understand and work their way through the process of the emergency wage supplement and the emergency income benefit, the CERB. So far, you can imagine right now, as of this week, since the application process opened on Monday, there's been 4.5 million applications on the wage benefit that the government announced. 4.5 million. Of course, the employment numbers came out this morning, and close to 1.1 million Canadians are unemployed, and you can expect that number to grow exponentially in the April jobs report. So we're really trying to help, and my staff have done terrific work making sure that people are guided in the right direction, employers are guided in the right direction, and get the information that they need. So I would encourage everybody who's listening to email our office or phone our office. Please do not use social media in a thread to try to get our attention, because it will get lost. I've had people who said, you haven't answered my Facebook message. Well, when I look, it's in a thread of 100 messages, and we just email and phone call is the only way that we're going to respond. But by the grace of God, we pick up a message somewhere, we'll respond to it then. But please call or email my office, and I'm sure you'll provide that information on the Zoom, Josh.
Thank you. And maybe we can get the Sandbox to circulate the contact information for Andrea, for John and Doug as well afterwards. That'd be great. Next I want to talk about the emergency business account. On March 27th, the federal government announced a $25 billion emergency business account. It's a government guaranteed interest-free loan of up to $40,000 for companies and not-for-profit organizations administered through big banks. If it's repaid before December 2020, it will result in a loan forgiveness of 25%. If it cannot be repaid before December 31st, 2022, it can be converted into a 3-year term loan, charged interest rate of 5%. Qualifying organizations paid between $50,000 and $1 million in total payroll in 2019. Enrollment is presently available, and our experience may be approved immediately upon completion of the brief application. Janice, can I get your comments on that a little bit too?
Yeah, we got some word today, really positive feedback that some clients put applications in literally this morning through their banking institution online, and they got immediate approval. And so as far as I know, what happens is it creates a separate line of credit, like a Visa. You don't get a Visa card, but I don't know if that varies between each banking institution, but it was immediate. So it was awesome. Good feedback on that.
Okay, and John and Doug, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I just will say that I did have a couple calls today, Josh. Disappointingly, there are some small businesses who aren't showing, if it's one person show, they didn't quite pay themselves $50,000 in the small business. They were taking some money out in other ways, whether it be a company vehicle or doing some expenses. So they've had some issues with that, and they're falling just a little bit under that gap. So you do have to make sure you do fall within the qualifications, which are the $50,000 to $1 million in payroll, because I have had a couple calls from some not very small, but smaller-ish type companies who payrolls don't fall within that, and they're not qualified for this. So they're going to be struggling a little bit to try and get in there.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
The only other thing that I would add is, and I'm glad, Janice, that there are some positive stories that are starting to come out.
Yeah.
The Bank of Canada has backstopped liquidity into our banking system to the tune of $300 billion. $300 billion of injected liquidity into the banking system. And those aren't Bank of Canada dollars, those are tax dollars. So they belong to all of us who are watching this today. The other thing that the government has done is backstop billions of dollars, which has made this business account available to the tune of almost $60 billion. I might be off by 1 or 2 billion. So, you know, when the banks are dealing with this, they should be looking at this, you know, in terms of where the business is at. In fact, the phone call I had just before I came online was from a mortgage lender. So there is, as Janice said, some success in that. But, you know, the challenge right now is, again, the numbers. And so I hope that the banks continue to be open when businesses are coming to them and asking for the business account to be set up, backstopped by the government. But, you know, the fear is within the mortgage and business community is that the numbers, the sheer magnitude of the numbers, the million of unemployed people today and the level of 4 million, 4.5 million people applying for the CERB, we really have to keep an eye on the banks right now that they don't sort of go inward and stop based on risk assessment, making sure that individuals and businesses are looked after through this process, because, as I said, the government has backstopped a lot of this, a lot of the liquidity that the banks are now seeing right now with tax dollars. So something we're going to have to keep an eye on over the course of the next week or two.
Thanks, John. And so next, we want to talk about the Business Credit Availability Program. $65 million. It's a $65 million program administered through EDC and BDC in financial institutions. I think that's what you may have been referring to, John, to provide funds for companies in need of liquidity. Standard qualification process for BDC loans under BCAP. Standard due diligence. For example, you can't refinance existing debt, change of ownership, or pre-revenue companies. Loans of up to $2 million, originally quoted at 3.3% interest rate, but subject to changes in BDC's floating rate. The term is, you're looking at 36 months. The first 12 are principal postponement or interest-only payments. BDC would rank second to existing debt, and you must give a personal guarantee. So, John, was that what you know, EDC will guarantee new operating credit and cash flow term loans up to $6.25 million. I don't know if we have details yet. Maybe I can get John and Doug to comment on that. Co-lending program for small and medium businesses for additional liquidity. Once again, we don't have details. And if you bank with multiple financial institutions, you can only apply to emergency funds from one. So John, Doug, can you guys comment on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's well known, the program that's out there with the BDC. I was referring to the liquidity that has been put towards commercial banking institutions in this country, not just from the Bank of Canada. You know, there's sort of a parallel path here. The government has backstopped loans to commercial institutions, and they've also made this program available through the BDC, and there's another program through EDC as well. So, you know, when I say that, you know, businesses, you know, should be in a position where the banks are not treating them like it's just another day, there's reason for that because of the level of liquidity that's been put in the backstop that's been put in by the government using our tax dollars. Josh.
Yeah, I'll just add that the $40 million loan, Josh. So this is something like our folks in Ontario we're working with feds on. So the $40 million loan, it is a guaranteed loan. So it's an important detail. And it's not just with EDC that they're doing the $40 million, it's EDC in partnership with the Business Development Bank.
Yeah.
So just to, that's where you get kind of the guaranteed part of that loan, because it's supposed to fill a gap that they had within some of the other subsidies and wage guarantees people can apply for. This is supposed to be directed specifically to small and medium-sized enterprises.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andrea. So now we want to talk about, there's two very big programs that will have an impact on employers. The one with employees as well. The first is the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, and that seems to be the most popular one. It's a taxable benefit of up to $2,000 per month for 4 months. You must demonstrate that you haven't received income for at least 14 consecutive days within the 4-week period within which you're applying for benefits. You cannot receive both the CERB and EI. It's only one at a time. You can, however, receive them back to back. If you've already applied for EI and then the claim has been processed, / you're receiving benefits, you'll continue to receive EI for the length of the EI program. If you've applied and your claim hasn't been processed, it appears appropriate claims will be automatically pulled into the CERB stream. Benefits via direct deposit expected to be received within 3 to 5 days from application. So eligible workers that they must have resided in Canada for at least 15 years of age. They have stopped working because of COVID-19 and have not voluntarily quit their job, or are eligible for EI regular or sickness benefits. They had an income of at least $5,000 in 2019 or in the 12 months prior to the date of their application. They are or expect to be without employment or self-employment income for at least 14 consecutive days in the initial 4-week period. For subsequent benefit periods, they expect to not have employment or self-employment income. The application process is administered through Service Canada online portal through CRA accounts. Individuals will also be able to apply over the phone or in person where available. The application schedule is posted widely online, and it's on these slides as well. And payments are to be made on a bi-weekly basis for up to 16 weeks. So I know this is a very popular initiative right now that was launched by the federal government. I know that a lot of people have been looking at applying, those who have lost their jobs as a result of COVID-19 or a shortage in work. Janice, can you kind of talk about your experience with that as well? Have you had any encounters with that?
Yeah, actually pretty extensive this week because we're assisting employees with our clients actually with their unemployment insurance applications. So I think what's important to note is that if as an employer you're issuing a short-term layoff as a result of COVID-19 and the employee has the required insurable earnings, which is 665 hours for the Barrie area, then the recommendation based on all the information we've been provided from Service Canada as well as CRA is certainly the recommendation we're providing to employers is to get to advise the employees to actually apply for unemployment insurance, and that CRA is making the decision. They're vetting the claims and pulling them over into whether they're eligible for CERB. But as Josh noted, it's really important for everybody to be aware that payments to be made on a bi-weekly basis for up to 16 weeks. So if your employee applies for CERB but doesn't apply for unemployment, then it can be problematic in the future if you need to extend the layoff past the 16 weeks, right? Because then it has to switch over potentially, unless they change it, back to unemployment. So what we're recommending is that they fill out the unemployment insurance application, and then when they log into their portal, it will show if their application's been pulled over to CERB.
Thanks, Janice. John and Doug, do you have anything to add to that as well? Any changes that we can anticipate, or how is the rollout so far?
I'm aware that checks have come out quite quickly this week. There has been a little bit of an issue with some that we're hearing about, where some people are getting multiple checks, and they're not quite sure. There's a bit of a mixed message right now as to whether that is overpayment or proper payment. So I actually was aware this morning of someone who received 3 different checks. So we're asking people to make sure to not go out and spend all that money. Not that there's a lot of places to spend it on right now, because there may be some pullback on some of those. It sounds like there may have been some overpayments, and there has been some people getting multiple checks, but the checks have started rolling out. They've come out very quickly, and it's getting into the hands of people already. John, do you have anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I'm actually going to give the CRA a tremendous amount of credit. You know, one of the things we talked about last time we were on was just the magnitude of this. And as I said at the onset, 4.5 million Canadians this week have applied for the CERB benefits. And to have those benefits roll out as quickly as they have is a tremendous amount of credit to the Canada Revenue Agency and all of the bureaucracy who's come together, because I didn't think that, quite frankly, that was going to happen and it was going to be efficient. In saying that, there are some problems that people are receiving in some cases 2 or 3 times what they expected. Now, we've got to remember that the benefit is retroactive to March 15th. So in some cases, they may have got that March 15th to April 11th period and then got the April 12th period to whatever the date is in May. And I think the other thing that's important for people to understand is that it's a $2,000 taxable benefit, as you said, Josh. which means that by the time the deductions are going to be made from a tax standpoint, it amounts to only about $1,400. So people have to keep in mind that they will be paying tax on this at tax time next year. The other thing that I'm hearing, and Doug, I mentioned this to you earlier, in the case where part-time employees are working in a business, in some cases, many cases, they're actually going to be making more money on the CERB than they would be working on a part-time basis. And this is causing problems for some employers because their employees are not coming into work because they're claiming the CERB benefit to get the $500 a week, which is more than what they would be making on a part-time basis. And so, again, I want to emphasize that this is not a system that is designed for fraudulent use, and that your social insurance number is required. And if there's any sense that people are abusing this, the Canada Revenue Agency will find out. And so, we can't be using this benefit, or people can't be using it for fraudulent purposes. And there are, this is not the only example that I can use, but just remember that it's there as an emergency response benefit to help people who are truly being affected by COVID-19. It's not to be used by people who are employable, whose business is deemed essential, and yet they're using this as a way to effectively get 4 months of $2,000 a month, which is more than what they would make in their normal job. So this is causing a problem for employers. I don't know, Janice, whether you're hearing anything at this point, but it seems my office is the first point of contact on this.
Yeah, there's a couple of actually challenges. So that was great, John, because that's a challenge for those individuals that like are lower wage earners, like part-time employees who can actually then earn more. But then the other challenge that we'll see is if Canada Revenue Agency is pulling claims over from Service Canada, the max EI weekly is $573 per week, right? So somebody potentially, if they're a higher wage income earner, can max out at $573. They would be making more through unemployment than they would be through CERB. And the other challenge, actually, John, I don't know if you know if they're going to make a decision on this. We've been on the phone all week, and it seems like CRA and Service Canada, they don't have answers at this point. But if everybody's aware of the sub program, the supplementary unemployment benefits, so we've got a lot of clients that have topped up the employees' benefits. But what's unclear is if CRA pulls those claims over and those employees are collecting CERB, right now the terminology is that the eligibility is that they have to have no income. Right. But if the employer's continuing to do top-ups, we don't want the employees to be penalized. So that seems to be not clear at this point. What we're hearing is that there has been no decision made on it. So I don't know, John, if you've got any more comments about that.
I don't. I guess what I would say to that, Janice, is that there's no requirement on the part of an employer to top it up by 25%. Oh. There is a hope that they would, but let's not be naive and think that if an employer or a business has seen their revenue decline by 80 to 90, in some cases 100%, that they're in a position to top up that 25%. And so the wage subsidy, as I said in the last call that we had, is designed to help people meet their obligations, as is the CERB, or at least attempt to meet their obligations. And the reason why it's important for the wage subsidy to be utilized is that it does keep people employed and on the payroll. And so when that transition starts happening and we start working our way out of this, it'll be much easier of a process for the employers to call their employees back. In some cases, they may be working part-time right now or even full-time, but it may be that much easier in terms of the transition back to some sense of normalcy when we get to that point. The other thing that it does as well is it's a psychological thing. Not people don't like being on, if they've worked for 20 or 30 years or 15 years and they're loyal to a company, they like to be loyal to that company. And so, it's important. But that 25% top up, we haven't heard You know, whether there'd be a clawback with respect to the wage subsidy or any of the emergency response benefits, but there's no obligation on the part of employers to do that. It'd be a nice thing to do, but we also have to be realistic as well.
Yeah, sorry, John. What I was, that's great information. I was referring to the a supplementary unemployment benefit. So employers can actually top up the difference between unemployment insurance at 55% up to 95% of their salary. So we've got quite a few employers out there that are even topping up the unemployment by 20%. Right. But if CRA is pulling the claim over, we're unsure just as it relates to the CERB.
Yeah, I'm unsure as it relates to, there's many unionized environments as well where through their collective agreements, employers pay the top up as well. It's been negotiated part. So I'm unclear on that, but I can certainly, between Doug and my office, we can find out, Janice, for sure.
Okay, yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys. And so I just want to touch on work sharing program relatively quickly so we can get to the questions. I see we have about 18 minutes left.
Josh?
Yeah.
I have a conference call at 4:45. So I'm going to have to leave in the next 3 minutes. I may as well leave now, and I apologize for that. But I've got a very important conference call at 4:45. Okay, so. No,
John, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your insight. It's been valuable. And if anyone online has any questions, we'll make sure to circulate John's office's contact information. Thank you so much, John.
Please do. Thank you, everyone.
So just quickly on the work sharing program, it allows employers to reduce the employee work week without having to lay off the employees. And as John was alluding to earlier, I mean, the psychological impact of this can be huge for both employees and employers. It allows the employees to maintain a sense of identity with their workplace, a sense of unity, allows the employers to maintain that connection with their employees, while also having the benefit of the employee go on EI for the 1 day that they, or the 2 days, or the 3 days that they don't work. The program has a 38-week maximum period now, or had rather, now eligible for up to 76 weeks. The minimum term is 6 weeks. The application process has been streamlined, so you must complete the application and appendix for each work sharing unit. Detailed recovery plan requirement has been eliminated. An inquiry email account has been established for employers to reach out and ask questions regarding the work share program. And you can see that here on the PowerPoint as well, which will be circulated. The former requirement of 10% reduction in business activities has been eliminated. So perhaps quickly, can we just get Doug to comment on this program? Any questions that you've been seeing?
No, I'll be honest with you, Josh. This is one that's interesting. Up in Barrie, Springwater, Ormonte, we haven't had one call or inquiry about the sharing program yet. I don't know if Janice has had anybody from the HR side looking into it, but this is one that we really haven't had a lot of people inquiring about yet. Surprisingly enough, but it hasn't been.
Yeah, we have quite a few employers actually, Doug, and certainly inquiring about it and actually completing the application forms too as well. Just a couple of quick details. You have to have a minimum of 2 employees that are part of one work sharing unit. You can have multiple work sharing units within the organization. And right now, it used to be where it was a 30-day window of application process to get it approved before you execute on it. Now it's been changed to 10 days. So it is a really good program if you anticipate that you're going to have to, you're going to have a decrease in sales moving forward, and you want to maybe ease your employees back into the workplace. Just from an operational perspective, it is a good program for employers to certainly utilize.
Yeah, and just one further comment, and then we're going to open it up for questions, is that, you have to, with respect to the working unit, I mean, if there's enough work for that working unit to continue working full time, you can have that working unit continue full time. Whereas if another working unit doesn't have enough work to keep them at full capacity, they can go on that work share arrangement, and then they can be called back at any time if they do have enough work to continue forward. So I just, we're going to get into questions, but one question that I want to pose to MPP Kanjan that I've been receiving quite a bit is that, is there an expectation that the essential services list will continue to be refined and revised as we go forward? Or is that just something that we're going to have to evaluate on a daily basis?
I would say that the simple answer is yes, but everything comes with details, right? So as we get more data, our public health information and data is now public for the province of Ontario. So everyone can monitor that and see where the trends are going, and that's going to inform our decisions. So we've been getting a lot of questions as to, okay, this is the second time the province has updated it. Will there be another version, and would the version be shorter or longer? And we're not there yet. But I would just say stay tuned and reach out to my office if you ever have specific questions. And the other, another common question is whether or not under the Employment Standards Act, we would extend the weeks in terms of what's covered under the ESA. And so that's being reviewed right now as well, just so we have all the information before going forward. But with the essential services list, as much as we can, we don't want to over disrupt the economy as it's already disrupted. We understand this is a health pandemic, and we do want to put all our resources on the health side. But we have been working really diligently on the provincial level with the federal government to try to make sure that our economy is still able to function in some sort of ability. And so that's why there's all this emphasis on curbside collection, going online, and allowing businesses to still function, but just differently. And so, I mean, I'm always open to hearing other suggestions from employees. I'm on the phone all the time in terms of how do they change they might have questions. If I do the following, if I change my business to doing X instead of Y, can I still operate? And so we're happy to take those as well in my office.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. So I think we're going to open up to questions. Jacqueline, can you load up the queue?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. We have a question about employees who receive commission and how the wage subsidy will work in applying to those employees who aren't receiving the same pay right now because sales are down. Maybe Janice could answer that.
I think at this point we don't have enough information about that until they work through that. I'm assuming that they'll take that into consideration, because we do have still a lot of occupations that certainly in the sales industry sector where they're 100% paid commission employees, right? So we don't have that answer as far as I know at this point. Unless Andrew, do you know that?
We're not, sorry, about the pay?
The wage subsidy. I think that would be a question for Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
No, we don't have that yet either. Hopefully, now that we know we're going back on Saturday, a lot of the details weren't worked out on this program yet. So that's, again, something we'll be pushing out as soon as it's ratified and agreed to. And just getting back to what John said at the beginning, information, there's a ton of information out there right now. We're trying to get it as best we can. Definitely, if there's questions specific like this after Saturday, once it's ratified, hopefully it's ratified, then call or email us. We still have our office open and staffed. Also, there's not going to be bodies in there over the weekend, but we will be checking emails. We just had a conference call with our staff today. But please, as John said, don't do it over social media. That is becoming a bit of a problem. We do need to get the questions direct, but hopefully we will have that after Saturday, and we'll make sure that gets addressed.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Jacqueline?
Thanks, Doug. We have a question about someone who's received calls from people who are still doing some work in their businesses who don't qualify under, it says, this program. I'm not sure exactly which program the question asker is referring to, but they said that because they have nominal income, they don't apply for a program, and they also don't qualify for any other assistance. Will something be put in place for these people? Doug, do you know of any plans or proposals in place or in the works? Or Janice, do you have any recommendations for how to proceed?
I think probably Doug, if you've got any maybe comments about that. I'm not aware of any other programs as it relates to that particular question.
No, we did have a lot of questions about that this week, and I don't think that's been ironed out fully yet. The problem was that some people, you weren't allowed to make any money on that program. And some people, were doing small contract things, whether it be for $50 or $100, and that's made them ineligible to get the benefit. So I know they were looking at that. I have it in front of me now. I don't have the details on that. I don't think that's been adjusted yet, but we do know there's a gap on that right now. and that is something they want to try and address, and hopefully they can get that worked out, because it seems ridiculous that we want people to be out working. We want them to be making as much money as they can. We want the economy to keep going as best it can in these times. So I know that was a concern, and we had addressed it through the opposition, through our critic, Pierre Poilievre, had been asked about that, but I have not seen the results from it yet. Once we do get that, we'll make sure we get that out.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. Another question, and I know we've touched a little bit on the tax implications of the benefits, but maybe we could add a little bit of clarification. Someone's asking how the wage subsidy will affect us from an income tax perspective and whether it will be included in income for the businesses. Janice, is this something that you've come across?
Probably I'll defer to Doug on that, because I'm not fully I don't know in terms of the implications from a tax perspective at this point.
Yeah, I actually read that question when it came up on the screen earlier, and I was wishing I had that answer. We're getting some tough ones today. As people can see, there's a lot of questions on this, and perhaps we need to have an accountant on there next time with this, Josh, too. But I'm not aware of that. That has not been brought up to me yet whatsoever as to the implications as to whether that's taxable for the business. So I don't have that answer. I have not been asked that yet, but that is a good question. We can try and get you that too.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
And I'm sure the answer will change 10 times before it's actually solidified as well, right? Like, I mean, the thing about this situation is it's an ongoing, constantly evolving. We're seeing these are brand new programs that are brand new to Canada, brand new to employers, brand new to employees. These are uncertain times, but I mean, it's good to see that both levels of government, both Premier Ford and the federal government, are really acting proactively. And I'm sure, like the Prime Minister said, no one's going to be left behind. We're going to try and take care of all our businesses and employees. So, I mean, these are issues that will have to be ironed out if they haven't already been so. So we'll try and stay on top of that for you. And I agree with Doug, maybe next time we need to have an accountant on here.
Another question for Doug. I don't know if you want to discuss a little bit the $100,000 refund proposal, or 100%, sorry, refund proposal for employers' payments of EI and CPP that has been discussed as of, I believe, yesterday.
So I'm not sure exactly what the question is.
There was discussion about a proposal for 100% refunds for employers paying into EI and CPP for particular employees. So people are just wanting to hear a little bit more about that, if we have any insight into that, and whether
No, we don't. And this is the frustrating thing. And Josh, thanks for this together today. And I hope people aren't getting frustrated by lack of answers. But what's happening sometimes is there's a lot of announcements being made every day by the government, and that's great. And they're trying to get programs in place, but the details aren't coming out as quick as they can see. Going back to the Canadian emergency wage subsidy, that was announced over a week and a half ago, and it's not hammered out yet for the details. So there has been a lot of discussions out there, but the details aren't in place yet. We're as frustrated with everybody. We're trying to get these answers out, but we don't have those yet. So if that was discussed yesterday, that has not come across our tables yet on briefing notes, and I don't have the details yet, and I apologize.
And if I could just jump in
here.
here.
Go ahead.
Imagine what might end up happening, and because provincially we're in discussions constantly with like our finance minister, with the federal finance minister, and the premier with the deputy premier. But when the province came out with this WSIB policy, the dollar figure on that was $1.9 billion. It allowed for deferral and no interest for employees, and so that was a way for us to save employees. They would have more cash in hand, liquid capital to help them out with. So that particular idea in terms of deferring payments for 6 months with no interest for premiums and whatnot for WSIB, that idea is being sort of thought about in terms of other areas they can do it in, whether it's CPP or EI. But I know that in terms of what I've heard, no decision has been made. But that's that would be the idea, is the deferring for employees having to pay in. Because if you think about it right now, if you are still in business, you're paying a paycheck to your employees, but there's all these other things that get taken off, right? Again, I'm not the accountant on this call for certain, but things that are taken off a weekly paycheck are things like WSIB, CPP, and EI premiums. And so how do you, as employee, now you could be giving your employers or your business more capital, but you're losing that because you're actually paying it back into the government. So that still needs to be ironed out.